What's up? Welcome back to Volume 3 of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Got Brian Bruner and Zach Rom with me once again. This week, we diving deeper into the what and why of who we draft, who we target, who we try to avoid. Not just the draft this guy, draft that guy because he's good. I don't like him. He sucks. I don't like his jersey number, his team he plays for. Hopefully have some good insight for you. Start off with a fairly rare player for player NFL trade yesterday. The Steelers sending essentially Mika Fitzpatrick for Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey. Some additional draft picks were exchanged. Does that move the needle much for the Dolphins offense, Steelers offense?
For me, it doesn't change much anything. I mean, the Dolphins offense, I was expecting them to open it up more this year and Jonnu Smith to go down, so that makes a kind of perfect transition for them to move away from him. Whereas for the Steelers, I'm loving Freiermuth. I think he's still the future there. I think Jonnu Smith might make Freiermuth a good buy low, but I don't see either being drastic splashes where we should be drastically changing one value or the other here or there based upon this trade. I think it's a little change here or there, but pretty much still status quo.
I wasn't really looking at it as super impactful. I think the area that I see it having some positive impact would be for the three primary Dolphins skill guys, A-Chain, Waddle, and Tyreek. Jonnu just clogged up so many targets last year, and whether they want to air it out a little bit more or they want to keep with the quick release, get the ball out of to his hand stuff, that's a lot of vacated targets. So I think just by default, this is a positive for those three. I don't think it's they're not jumping up 2 rounds in value or anything like that. But I mean, I definitely think you got to look at it as a positive if you roster any of those three. And then with the Steelers, it's messy. It's tough. It's tough that
111 Jonnu targets. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And 8 touchdowns that open up too.
And a lot of them were like, it was kind of middle to later season. So it was like he was hyper targeted, for the back half there. So, yeah. And then as far as the Steelers side, I mean, I guess it helps. Aaron Rodgers is probably the Steeler that you look at that gets, has an improvement from it. But yeah, it's kind of messy. I'm pretty sure it lowers the value of Jonnu. It definitely lowers the value of Freiermuth as far as what you'd expect from them this season, even like in the just overall dynasty value. So I don't think it's anything crazy. I think they both might be a little bit of a buy low, especially in like best ball leagues where you're rostering a group of mediocre tight ends and just hoping for the best each week. Yeah, that's about all I got on it. It's definitely not a major trade.
Yeah, now you're not talking about big name tight ends, but going back to 2018, you're looking at Aaron Rodgers having 3 primary tight ends, Tyler Conklin, Robert Tonyan, and Jimmy Graham. And only once since 2018 has an Aaron Rodgers tight end scored over 150 PPR fantasy points. And that was Robert Tonyan back in 2020. So Rodgers doesn't seem like he likes targeting his tight ends. So I almost think this is a good sell high point for Jonnu Smith. Thinking if people are thinking he's going to come in here, he's going to take over for Freiermuth, buy low Freiermuth, sell high Jonnu Smith at this point, I think is probably a good time to do that.
That Robert Tonyan year was all touchdowns too. He had 45 catches and 9 touchdowns or something like that.
That was the outlier season of outlier seasons, one of the biggest I can ever remember. I think he had 3 touchdowns. It was a primetime game. I think he had 3 touchdowns, and that rate was not sustainable. But everybody bought in. Everybody thought he was going to be. He was drafted so high the next season.
That's a little bit of a pro tip there, man. If you have a player that's not that good that blows up in prime time and everybody gets to see it, a la Gabe Davis in that freaking playoff game.
Yes.
Sell, man. They're mediocre before that game
Oh,
for a
don't speak
reason.
of
And,
Gabe Davis like that.
oh man, it was just that's your guy. Mid guy blows up on national TV, man. Get some offers for him.
Yeah, especially if they're not in their first couple years, still improving. That's a perfect time. You know, I hate seeing in my league if a guy get 3 touchdowns, the next day a guy puts him on the block, but that's the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does even the leagues that award more tight end premium points, does that sway your mind on Jonnu or any other tight ends that are moving around this year?
For me, just the higher the tight end premium, the slightly more valuable it makes the position. I'm still generally out on them at almost any league, but the higher the premium, the better. I mean, you need them. You have to have one of them slides into your lineup in best ball, and in lineup leagues, you actually have to pull the trigger on starting one each week. So,
Yeah,
you got to have them. They're a necessary evil in most leagues. But I definitely think this lowers the value for this season and right now for Jonnu and Freiermuth, who some people looked at as starters.
Yeah, I don't know how the Steelers managed to get older, but they did. They've got Robert Woods, Aaron Rodgers, Jonnu Smith. Now they've got Jalen Ramsey feels like he's been in the league 15 years.
He's not young, no.
No, he's been bounced
Keenan
around.
Allen and Amari Cooper are still out there. The Steelers could get older. Careful what they wish for.
Yeah. Yeah, they need another wide receiver there. I don't think you can trust their whoever you say is their wide receiver 2 right now. You can't trust them. They got to get another wide receiver, and the only ones on the market are those older guys. So yeah, it's hard to think that they're not going to get older at some point in the next couple months.
All right. So one of the things we want to touch on tonight was a wins over replacement model that Brian's been working on through his couple leagues. Brian, gives a little more insight onto what values you use to target the players.
All right, cool. So the WORP tool is a tool come up with by South Harmon Fantasy Football. They're a fantastic page. They offer all kinds of resources to help you catch an edge over the rest of your league. They are guys that started with Destination Devy with Ray GQ on that page, doing a ton of like Devy leagues and college scouting. And that's, one of the entities, or so to speak, that I follow a lot for my takes on incoming rookies, since I don't do a ton of scouting myself. But anyhow, South Harmon Fantasy Football, awesome. Check out their website. Wonderful stuff. But anyhow, wins over replacement player is just a chart that will show you the 5-year average of any league you're in Sleeper. Gives you all 4 positions: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, and it shows you that tight end 1 all the way down to tight end 50, what kind of edge they give you in your league. It drastically changes when you make any slight change in the scoring of your league. So if you're talking just a vanilla super flex PPR league with nothing extra going on, quarterback's going to be sky high, wide receiver is going to be the next most important, running back a decent bit behind them, and tight end useless. I mean, borderline useless. We're going to show you the chart here for a league that I play in. It's the Fantasy Holics 2 Dynasty League. This league has a 0.25 carry bonus, and it also has no tight end premium. It's just a PPR super flex league with the only extra scoring being the running back, carry. Well, all the players get a carry bonus, but you'll see on the chart that tight end is the yellow line at the bottom there. It doesn't even touch the other lines. It's even the highest ranked tight end is nothing special. And I get into like heated arguments with people about how useless tight end is in fantasy football in general, dynasty, what have you, because people want to go to the grave saying that, Brock Bowers is going to win them their league. And man, we drafted Sam Laporta last year. They got a juggernaut team now, and it's like, dude, you haven't seen the data. You're not looking in the right places. This is just, it's brutal. And then, I don't want to ramble too long on charts. It's a bit of nerdiness, but it's helpful. But the only other thing I want to point out is that green line for running back in this league. It's fantastic. I mean, it's up over quarterback. I mean, you could, the running back 1, running back 2, they're up there more valuable than QB1 and QB2 over a 5-year average. So don't sleep on points per carry. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. If you're in a points per carry league similar to this one, load up on running back. I know that's a little intimidating to do in dynasty leagues because they die so fast and lose value so fast. But if you want to win, put 2 running backs in the 2 running back slots. If you got 2 or 3 flexes, put one in all those spots and then worry about filling out receiver. This chart speaks for itself on the importance of those positions. So that's just, one of the reasons I preach, or I'm so negative on tight end, I guess, is looking at the data and just seeing it, how it plays out in all my leagues. I'm going to pop up another chart here. This is
useless, yeah, but it's a wild card. We've taken out through the years, defenses have been taken out and kickers been taken out, and people want tight end removed, but it's a wild card. It's like the green space on the roulette wheel. It's that wild card that every so often that green spot hits and you go, oh, damn it. That's how the house wins, that random spot. And it's the same odds feel like it's factored in. The tight end is the green spot on the roulette wheel. It has to stay.
I mean, as long as your league forces you to start a tight end,
it should stay.
It's something you have to factor in and something you have to address. I choose to just be the last person to take a tight end. And in the current area of tight ends, you can absolutely be the last person to take a tight end. In a redraft league, I mean, you could still have Njoku or Goddard or guys like that.
Yeah.
In dynasty leagues, you could wait until the round 20 something and have Brenton Strange and Chigakonkwo and these guys that are valuable and useful, and they're really not that much less useful than guys that you're spending 5th and 6th round picks on. So that's just, charts like these have kind of proven what I've always felt about tight end, that it's, it's not that important.
If you go back 2 years ago, it might be crazy to think now, McBride was being picked in the 25th to 30th round of startup drafts. Tucker Kraft was in the 15th to 20th. Like, these tight ends that are big now, Laporta, even Kincaid, like, you could get those very cheap. Then all of a sudden they drastically rose in value, and now you can even see them creeping down again. That the tight end position is so volatile. It almost, we're talking about running backs being 1-year rentals. Tight ends are almost even more volatile than that. Like, for those listening in, looking at this win over replacement chart, tight end 6 gives you less. Actually, even tight end 5 gives you less than 1 win over replacement player, whereas wide receivers don't hit less than 1 win over replacement player till wide receiver 20. That's quarterbacks. Wide receivers don't hit it till wide receiver 30. Same thing with running backs. Like, if you're talking about the wide receiver 30 giving you the same win over replacement player than tight end 5, why not wait on tight end? Why not push farther back and get that better value of that quarterback, that wide receiver, that running back, and not push for that tight end early, unless, as you mentioned, we'll talk about another chart in a minute, where unless those tight ends get that huge premium, wait on it, push it back. It seems weird. It feels awkward to do, to go to the 20th round of your startup draft and not have a full starting lineup, but that's where you can succeed. Imagine 2 years ago you get McBride on the 25th as your starting tight end. Like, what position would you be in now versus you draft Laporta in the 3rd round last year, or 4th round this year, and you're feeling like you can't even start him. Like, there's so much else you can do than just draft a tight end early.
What you just said, tight end 6 is equivalent to running back and wide receiver 30.
Yeah.
that's, who's running back 30 and wide receiver 30 last year? I don't know off the top of my head, but they're not sexy names. And they were worth as much or more than guys like TJ Hawkinson and, the 5th and 6th-ish range of tight end taken off the board in most scoring formats.
Yeah.
That's like the huge takeaway from looking at these charts when I first discovered them.
Yeah, our graphics King Jay just put on the page, on the Fantasyholics page a couple days ago, a piece about a positional advantage. That was a very good read. To me, it always feels like if you're getting a 20 a week from Brock Bowers or McBride or back in the day, Kelsey and Graham, it had to put you heads and tails above. But at the end of the day, the numbers say otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, tight end one is equivalent to like running back 10, 11. So that is, that certainly matters. Like if you have that in your lineup, that is a big advantage, but that's one guy. I mean, even just from tight end 1 to 2, there's a significant dip. So there's always going to be people in your league that value tight end. So my advice, let them scoop them up and just hang back and, fill it in.
Yeah, and I know people who are against tight end premiums because they're like, well, that makes the top 3 or 5 tight ends so valuable. Like you have to draft them first overall. It's like, actually that helps them some, but it actually brings the other tight ends to a level playing field. Like we're almost getting to the point where you need to eliminate the tight end position or give some more bonuses to make them more relevant, or just accept the fact that you can almost play the waiver wire game in Dynasty for tight ends each week to win your championship, which feels weird. But yeah, I mean, it almost seems like something needs to be done to that position in your leagues.
I think the
running back 30.5 PPR last year was Kareem Hunt.
Right.
Over tight end 5?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Right. Yeah, Kareem Hunt helped your team win more than the tight end 5 last year. Let that sink in.
Wow. That feels dirty.
That is, again, that's with no premium, but we'll go to the next chart. I won't spend too much time on the next ones because we definitely kind of went over the way that they work and what the lines mean and all that. But the second one we're going to pull up is no running or no points per carry. So just straight PPR. But this one does have a 0.5 point tight end premium. So this one, you can see the yellow line is still pathetic. It's still completely below the other positions. The other thing that you really notice when you lose the points per carry is the green and blue running back and wide receiver lines. They even out near the top, but then wide receiver takes the advantage from, wide receiver 12 on fairly drastically. So that's why in like not a standard, but in a normal PPR 1.0 or, 1.0 PPR league, wide receivers are pretty king, and you really do want to load up on them. And kind of the opposite of having all running backs all the way through the flex, I prefer to have wide receivers all the way through the flex. But then just, a quick look at this, the yellow line, man, that tight end line, even with a 0.5 point premium, it almost does nothing. And I didn't bring up one with a 0.75, but trust me, it looks just like this. It just doesn't really go anywhere until you really, really jump up the scoring.
Yeah. And again, for our listeners, this 0.5 point tight end premium brings that one win over replacement player to about tight end 15 instead of tight end 5, but you still have one win over replacement player and running back at running back 30, and it brings the wide receiver mark out to a wide receiver 40. You're looking at wide receiver 40 than tight end 15, and that they stays more consistent going up if you bring up to 1.5 over player. Like you're looking at not needing depth at tight end position, even with 0.5 point premium. Like it feels like a lot to some people starting in. Like, I've never done a tight end premium, I want to do this. It doesn't do much.
You'll definitely change my way on taking tight end. I've always kind of a tight end early guy. I used to go quarterback early back in the day when quarterbacks used to be cool to take in the 5th or 6th round. And I always it feels like, I mean, I had to have just gotten lucky because on long enough timeline with these points displayed like this, it's not the smartest move, not the safest bet.
Yeah, man. And then just to wrap up the nerding out with charts and graphs and stats, the third one, this league is a little unique. It's a very small starting lineup, so it is super flex, but it has a bunch of multi-flex positions where you could put a tight end, a running back, or a receiver into most of the other spots. But it has a 2-point tight end premium. So it's PPR where everybody gets a point per catch, and tight ends actually get a bonus of 2. So it's now 3 points per tight end catch. So they're getting 3 times as much as the other positions. And you can see on this chart, it's the yellow is certainly, it's certainly moved up, but it's still, it's not insane. It's not. You'd think getting 3 points per catch, that yellow line would just be towering above the other ones. But now it's just kind of mixing in. This league also has a pretty decent carry bonus, so that's why you see the green line for running back is a good bit above the wide receiver line. And then the quarterback, because it's a tiny starting lineup, I believe this is only like start 7. The quarterback, it's very unique. My buddy Blitz from South Harmon actually put this together to make a really cool, unique type of league that doesn't really exist anywhere. So quarterback, being that they're one of only 7 starting positions, they have a massive WORP advantage there. But again, 3 points per tight end catch, we're still not blowing out the rest of the league at that position. But this one at least makes them pretty valuable, as you can see.
Yeah, it looks in the first 6 to 10 positions that wide receiver, running back, tight end are close, and then with the carry bonus, the running backs take over. Then again, around tight end, wide receiver 14, 15, tight end just drops off, and wide receiver keeps coming up. Like it's crazy to think that even after a tight end 15. It drops off that hard, even with 3 points per reception. Like you're talking, you get 3 catches for 0 yards. That's 9 points from your tight end spot.
Literally.
Like that seems amazing. Like that's where I have a league very similar.
All in a day's work.
Yeah. We get 3 points per tight end reception. And I started 4 tight ends. Like I did well. I made it twice to the semifinals, but I'm starting Brock Bowers. I'm starting 3 or 4 top 10 tight ends, but otherwise you got to be, even in this format, don't overvalue those lower end tight ends. Don't pay premium for those lower end tight ends. They're not giving you any other positional. They're giving you less of a positional advantage than your other players. Whereas you see so many people paying up for tight end 20 to 30 in these type of leagues. Even this chart saying it's not worth it.
It's been me.
Yeah, man. I guess like last little takeaway from it is I think this is it's more like a avoid, not necessarily avoid Bowers and McBride. Like if you can get those guys, or you really want to have that positional advantage. You can see that the top tight ends, at least, they matter. They help. But it's those guys, once you get beyond like tight end 4, tight end 5, even in that range, and, down to tight end 12, stop spending up on them. Just load up on the other positions, and you can get guys that matter just as much. So, this isn't a completely F tight end take. If you want Bowers, you want McBride, you want Kittle, these guys do matter, but man, these charts, just look at them, dude. It's really not arguing with math, right?
Yeah.
But hey, enough with my nerdy charts. I do one more shout out to my boys at South Harmon, fantasyfootball.com. Check them out. They got a YouTube channel. They got a website. All these tools are available. Lots of this stuff's free. The Discord is one of the better places to hang out and bullshit about fantasy football and get advice and opinions, and love those dudes to death. So I don't want to take any credit for the WORP chart. I'm a fan of it and use the hell out of it. Koopa Troopa from over there is the one that pulled it up and put it together, and it's been a game changer for everybody that uses it, man.
Sounds like it.
Definitely. There's nothing nerdy about winning.
True.
So joining us this year is Zach Rom. You've probably might have seen some of his work on Twitter at Fantasy Wide Receiver Room 1. He's built a very nice model of ways to scout the next big thing at wide receiver. Why don't you tell us more about what tools you use and how and why, and the behind the scenes of what's...
Yeah, sounds good. I won't go too into depth because I will admit I nerded out on math, figuring out this wide receiver model. I think foundationally, before I really started trying to understand it, it was 40, 50 hours of math and Excel trying to figure out the nuances of it. So maybe at a later point we can dive deeper into some of that stuff, but I'll give a little bit of a basic. So yeah, as you mentioned, this is my first year with Fantasyholics. I started sharing some of my wide receiver takes this year on my X account, and it caught some of your eyes, and I'm absolutely loving kind of the diving into this content creating for fantasy football space that this has led me into, and it's blown me away. I never would have expected such a thing. But so what I was looking at last off season was, I'm a person who has a busy life right now. You know, I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. I have a very busy work schedule. I have a house that always needs some improvements on it. And I'm here loving Dynasty football, saying, I don't want to be behind, but be ahead of my league mates. And I've always had a passion for wide receivers. Like I just love, I loved playing it when we played football. I loved just the consistency of them in Dynasty football. You're having Mike Evans, Devontae Adams giving you top 10 finishes when they're 32, 33 years old. Like, you can see this longevity of this wide receiver position that I wanted to dive deeper into that, because whether you're a rebuilding team, whether you're a competing team, wide receivers are something you can stock up on, like no matter what type of position your team is in. And so what I wanted to do was find a way that me, who didn't have time to watch college football, could get ahead of my league mates when figuring out wide receivers. I'd watch a couple games here or there with my in-laws, but that was about it. And highlight tapes aren't consistent. You're getting the highlights of a player, but everyone has highlights. You're not going to be able to truly tell about the wide receiver just by seeing their highlights. So I wanted to go into a statistics-based model of what a wide receiver did in college to see if there's a way to connect it to success in the NFL. So this is where I'm going to skip over a lot of math, where I found previously successful NFL wide receivers, ones that were highly drafted, and failed, and then your diamonds in the rough, and tried to find not just the stats that the wide receivers that did well had, but I wanted to remove the stats where you had highly drafted wide receivers that failed were good at, because I didn't want these red herrings. I wanted truly to dive into what could do well. And that's where my wide receiver model came about. And one thing, this is a kind of a side point when talking about Dynasty football, when talking about stuff in general, is don't be afraid of failure. My first year, my wide receiver model said, stay away from Brian Thomas Jr., stay away from Ladd McConkey, draft Jermaine Burton, draft Troy Franklin. And you can see how well that take has aged already. But the idea is I failed, but I realized how I can grow from that. I realized I was missing some stuff. Like my data was good, but how I needed to view it and understand it, I just needed to change a little. And what I was missing I didn't take draft capital. I didn't take landing spot. I was just like, Jermaine Burton has a great profile. I don't care where he lands. He's going to do well. And when you're the wide receiver 3 or 4 behind T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, yeah, that's going to affect your opportunity share a ton. Whereas Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Jaguars, who had over 150 vacated targets, that's going to do great for him. Or Rome Odunze, who I think is going to do well this year, going into a place that actually probably had negative 100 targets with getting Keenan Allen. So there's a lot of adjustments I made over this last year, which has led me to my rookies this year, which you can see kind of coming on your screen now, where I want to talk a little bit about why the first thing you might see is I'm missing a tier 2. And I want to explain what these tiers mean before diving into a couple of the interesting takes you might see in these rookie tiers. And first off, these tiers are different from your normal in the extent of it's more of a grading scale than, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And what that means is tier 1 I have is a player that's their most likely outcome is elite success. Tier 2 is a strong starter with elite upside. Tier 3 is the widest range, which is either going to be a non-starter to a flex starter, but average is, your players that you're looking at during your bye weeks or injuries. Tier 3 is that position, and tier 4 is avoid. And that's where I didn't have anyone score in my tier 2 this year just because of how this wide receiver class is. But I think there's kind of 4 main ones when you're looking at this that are like, what's going on here? And you can see Jaden Higgins being in my tier 1, Mbuka and Luther Burden being in my tier 3, and Matthew Golden being in my tier 4. And that's something that, again, this is a stats-based model that has called players like draft Puka Nacua, avoid Quentin Johnston, avoid Sky Moore, like avoid Treylon Burks. Like these highly drafted wide receivers, if you go back 3 years, Treylon Burks was going at the 103. It was average 103, 104. Sky Moore was a late first. You're looking at these players that people were dropping multiple firsts sometimes to get, and look how well it turned out. And so what this model tries to do, or what I try and use with it, is to find value. This is saying, I don't think Mbuka is going to be more than a flex start, but if he's a consistent flex start, that's good. But are you drafting the Mbuka at the 107 to be just a consistent flex start at a ceiling? Or are you drafting Matthew Golden as an early second?
Zach, can I ask you this, because I don't think we ever talked about it. This model, is this strictly based on everything you saw from them in college, or does this also factor in their landing spots?
So there's 3 things that really take into account. The first is their stats, which kind of tells me where their potential ceiling is going to be. Then I take into account draft capital. What we see is if you're drafted in the first 3 rounds of the NFL, you have a drastically higher potential success than if you're drafted rounds 4 or later. So usually I take that into account. Usually rounds 1 and 2 I have, I give a double plus on, round 3 a plus on, and everything else I have as a separate rankings. And then I take landing spot into account. I think landing spot is severely underrated by the dynasty community. I hear so many people. One thing that was put into my mind my first year dynasty community was people telling me draft talent, not landing spot. Draft talent. Talent's what matters.
Yeah, you hear that a lot.
You hear that a lot, but is that true? Like, we see so many times where Rome Odunze had that talent, but he was wide receiver 50 this last year. Does that mean he's a bust? Or was it just Caleb Williams being a rookie, Keenan Allen coming in, taking targets? Like, is the talent still there, or was it the landing spot? Like, you look at Xavier Worthy of my model saying he's going to be a boomer bust flex play. And people were expecting once Rice went out, once Brown was still out, like Worthy was going as at an early first of value, and now it's tapered back to what I expected. So landing spot is incredibly important. You look at Mbuka, his landing spot, he's wide receiver 3. Sure, Godwin and Evans are injury prone, but he's coming in there taking the 3rd wide receiver reps straight off the bat. So yeah, landing spot is one of the main things I was missing that first year that is incredibly important to recognize. And I think that's one interesting thing about all my tier 1 players. I have Tet McMillan, Trey Harris, Travis Hunter, Jaden Higgins. Is when you're looking at their opportunity share of their landing spot, Tet McMillan's wide receiver 1 there. I don't think even Chargers fan think Quentin Johnston is going to stay their wide receiver 2 for long. Even if Trey Harris wasn't there, there's not confidence in him. Trey Harris, I think, is going to take the wide receiver 2. Travis Hunter, I mean, sure, you got Christian Kirk there.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. That's right. That's right. That's
it's just him and BTJ.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
who's their third? I forget. They did bring somebody in, but it's certainly nobody of consequence.
Nobody of consequence, yeah. And then when you look at Houston, that's where Christian Kirk is. But you look at Jaden Higgins coming in, where you got Tank Dell injured, Nico Collins, we talked about last episode, can't stay healthy. Jaden Higgins, I think, is going to come in there and surprise people with value. Like, all these tier 1 guys are going into, I would say, pretty great landing spots. Whereas when you look at everyone in tier 3, while they're to some extent their stats are there, their landing spots aren't great. Like, my model doesn't just take into account yards, receptions, and touchdowns, and that's it. Like, it takes into account so many other things: first downs, yards per receptions, yards per route run, routes, like volume and efficiency metrics to truly tell. And that's where Luther Burden and Mbuka, when I went into this, I'm like, okay, they're going to be top 4 wide receivers. Let's do this. And I'm like, crap. They didn't do nearly as well as I thought. And then their landing spots of Mbuka to the Bucks, Burden to Chicago. I was like, how high can I actually have them? Because their landing spots and their stats in college just didn't translate to what I expect success to be. Then Pat Bryant going to the Broncos, Ty Felton to the Vikings. Like, how many targets are they actually going to get? And then I'm a Patriots fan. I have no idea what the hell our wide receiver room is. Kyle Williams scored well enough to score in my tier 3. I threw him there. He could be my wide receiver 5 to my wide receiver 11 because I don't know what the hell we're doing. I hate saying that as a Patriots fan. What the hell are we doing?
I was praying for Javon Walker. As a UCF fan, man, he was electric. And I really think it was bad coaching last season. As a Colts fan, I still love watching the Patriots struggle. But, oh, man, I thought Javon Walker was going to be their wide receiver 2 behind Douglas. But, he didn't see the field for a reason.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. And what I think about half the dynasty community is going to agree with me on, and half is going to be up in outrage, is I have Matthew Golden in my tier 4.
That's the one that's people will start screaming about.
That when I started sharing my model, either half the comments were you're so right, and half are like, the hell are you thinking? Like, they immediately wrote me off just because of how low I had Matthew Golden. But when you look at it, his college stats were lackluster at best. And so many people were saying, well, his last 4, 5, 6 games were amazing. He really took off. Compared to Mbuka's last 5, 6 games, compared to McMillan's last 5, 6 games, even Trey Harris, look at the last 5, 6 games, he was healthy. All those blow Golden's games out of the water in their stats that I feel like they saw a couple highlights on national TV, and with how fast he ran, that's where the Golden hype's coming from. And I think what we have seen is fast receivers that have an okay route tree that are lackluster in college. Outside of Tyreek Hill, they fail in the NFL. And I have a hard time seeing Golden be something other than that.
Vet me on this, because I don't know. I feel like I've heard this more than once, but Matthew Golden had very little production until his last year at Texas.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So that's
even his last year,
flaggy, right?
Even his last year it wasn't amazing either.
Right.
I mean, his last 3, 4, 5 games were good, but that was about it. Some people were saying it was a scheme thing. They weren't scheming to him early on. Like, Do you think Ohio State was scheming for Jeremiah Smith when they had Mbuka his senior year? No,
Right.
they didn't start off doing that, but he just hit the ground running. Like, we see these wide receivers, if they are good, it doesn't matter if you're scheming to them. They're going to get the ball and they're going to be electric to start. Not, oh, well, they're just not scheming to him. We'll see how it goes. No. They're going to be electric to start. And Golden, it took Golden a while. And that's one other thing that my model takes into account is consistency. I take an average of 2 years of stats. I take their last year in college, and I take the best stats for each of my stats for their previous years to say, okay, what can their ceiling be? Because that's what I'm aiming for. So, like, if someone is a 1 year wonder in the NFL or in college and then goes to the NFL, we see sometimes that doesn't work out. Actually, probably more often than not, it doesn't. So what my model's looking for is consistency in college. We're looking for, 800-900 yards, a high yards per reception, high yards per route, and then jump into that 1,200, 1,300 mark with those numbers increasing. And that was the problem with Burden too, is he hit that 1,000-yard mark. People are like, he's going to be amazing. And then he did nothing his junior year. And so many people said, well, it's because of scheme. And I took that into account in my model. I was like, okay, if that's scheme, I'm going to take his sophomore stats, which are better, use just that and see what happens. And his ceiling isn't high according to my model either. It's so very interesting to see.
Yeah, I hate small sample sizes. I love to see a long track record of success.
And you brought this up last week. College success matters. When we're talking about quarterbacks, when we're talking about people being there, college success matters.
That's an awesome model. I wish I had the knowledge and patience to build something like that. Maybe someday. Something that's really opened my eyes in the last couple of years is the data analysis that's been.
Yes.
It's a new. I shouldn't say a new. It's just through social media. It's represented so well through an XY axis. You could take any two statistics: yards per route run for receivers, net yards per air attempt for quarterback. And when you see the data plotted on a chart, it's eye-opening. It's almost foolproof. There aren't many times where you'll see a stat of a player like catch percentage, and you see a player like Nelson Aguilar at the top. Like, no, these stats, the numbers crunched and explained in that format. It's one of my go-to tools. I love to get all the data analysis I can for, like I said, it's almost foolproof for any metric at any position. That's been one of my fallbacks lately in years past. I've been watching more college football, and since I've been playing more Dynasty and watching the games and seeing the tape, it's a little hard to differentiate it's easy to see who's great, but it's that second tier, third tier of like, they're good in college, but will that translate to the pros? It's one of the hardest things to quantify, I think, is separation. I don't know yet. I mean, I'm sure someone smarter than me knows how to quantify that, but I think separation for receivers, tight ends, that's a really missing key that I'd like to expand on. And if you know how to expand on it, that's key. Players like Jonathan Mingo, Terrence Marshall, these guys just disappeared overnight. They were decent draft picks, and before you knew it, they are in the XFL.
Yeah.
Or the Dallas Cowboys.
Or the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
With all the opportunity in the world.
Shameless plug. My model said to avoid Mingo, but besides the point, I think that's where two of my buy lows, we'll do a buy low episode at a later point, but two of my buy lows, Marvin Mims and Josh Downs, their separation yards per separation, massive, top 10, top 15. Like what we see is these route runners might not have the best stats in college, but they do so well in college just because of how they can go routes that we're seeing, as you see this, as you've been saying this, these analytics have been becoming better more recently, and we're seeing analytics that can now predict how these route runners that don't have massive touchdowns, don't have these giant highlights, but are highly consistent and can do well. We're starting to see these stats, these analytics that can help predict those type of players, which is huge in seeing who's going to be successful in the NFL.
Highlight reels only show the big catches. You probably could have seen it if you took a deeper dive on a Quentin Johnson that couldn't catch, or a Terrace Marshall that had no separation, or lack of route running. There was someone that I was thinking of their route, like another awesome tool is perception reception. I love to see as many green arrows as I can, and if I see one red arrow, maybe it's a little too knee jerky, but it's not a good sign.
Yeah.
On our original episode when we were talking about mantras and things like that, the one that I didn't bring up that is super important to me is there's so many resources out there, so many people like Matt Harmon and his perception, and all these places, South Harmon that I mentioned, and the big time ones, CBS, and there's so many people that dig so deep. Look at all the work that Zach has done. You can get that on our website, on our Facebook page. There is an endless resource out there. And if you want to dive in and you want to spend time and you want to listen to some podcasts and do some reading and do some research, it is such a massive edge. I know that once in a while, the chick from your office wins the fantasy football redraft league because she picked teams with, guys that she thought was cute, whatever the case. But most of the time, especially in dynasty leagues, the teams and the players that put in all the work, that put in all the research, that are constantly grinding the waiver wire, are the ones that win. And time again, I've seen it, and now I do it, and I win a lot more than I used to. And like most things in life, the more you put into it, the more you get back, man. So I think this episode was a great touch on what we all look at as great tools, and how we gain an edge. And that's it, man. If you're playing in a league with a bunch of noobs, God bless you, count your money. But if you're playing in a league and playing in a ton of leagues like me, with mainly a bunch of sharks that listen to a lot of content and do a lot of research, you need every little bit of help you can get, man. So this is a nice little dive into things that we like to, sharpen our fantasy blade, so to speak.
Yeah, and if you go into the next year, you might not have won, but with all the moves, your team gained value, and that's going to lead to winning the next year. And if you don't win the next year, your team, you do all these tools for your team to gain more value, and that value is going to pay off. Your team is going to increase in value more and more, and eventually you're going to be winning, and all that time and effort you put into it is going to lead to a crap ton of money in your league safe account that you keep joining more leagues. Like, it's going to pay off. And using all these different tools it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, using these tools through the years, you'll start to identify trends. You'll see, oh, that was an outlier season. Jonnu Smith, Darren Waller. That's not sustainable performance. Rashad Penny. You'll see these outliers, and you'll be smarter than just, looking at stats, or this podcast said, oh, hey, you should take Jamar Chase. Well, yeah, but when you go under the hood and you see how these stats are, how these players arrive at these stats, the routes that they're running, the yards that they're running, the quality of the targets, the quality of the touches, the yards before contact, the yards after the contact. That's the meat and potatoes of how they got there is more important than just looking at, oh, well, he did that last year. His jersey color's cool. I'm going to take him.
Yep.